After this adventure, they sailed on south and a little east for 12 days with a gentle wind, the skies being mostly clear and the air warm, and saw no bird or fish, except that once there were whales spouting a long way to starboard. Lucy and Reepicheep played a good deal of chess at that time. Then on the 13th day, Edmund, from the fighting top, sighted what looked like a great dark mountain rising out of the sea on their port bow. They altered course and made for this land, mostly by oar, for the wind would not serve them to sail northeast. When evening fell, they were still a long way from it, and rowed all night. Next morning the weather was fair, but a flat calm. The dark mass lay ahead, much nearer and larger, but still very dim. The others thought they were running into a mist. About 9 that morning, very suddenly, it was so close that they could see it was not land at all, nor even, in an ordinary sense, a mist. It was a darkness. It is rather hard to describe, but you will see what it was like if you imagine yourself looking into the mouth of a railway tunnel, a tunnel either so long or so twisty that you cannot see the light at the far end. And you know what it would be like. For a few feet you would see the rails and sleepers and gravel in broad daylight. Then there would come a place where they were in twilight, and then, pretty suddenly, but of course without a sharp dividing line, they would vanish altogether into the smooth, solid blackness. It was just so here. For a few feet in front of their bows, they could see the swell of the bright, greenish-blue water. Beyond that, they could see the water looking pale and gray, as it would look late in the evening. But beyond that again, utter blackness, as if they had come to the edge of a moonless and starless night. Welcome to Faithful Fables, a podcast where we examine the Christian themes in fantasy stories, and where every episode we are reminded to stay faithful. Hello everybody, welcome back to the show. Last time, we had an adventure on Duffer Island and experienced the Duffelpods and the magician who made them that way. This time, we are on seemingly the most supernatural of all the islands on this voyage. We will get into it more, but on this island, your dreams literally come true and manifest into reality. But not just the good dreams, the nightmares too. Once you're caught in the darkness, it may be impossible to ever escape. But before we get into that, I want to take a minute and thank everyone for all the continued support that the show is getting. We are getting consistent downloads every week, and I'm very thankful for that. For those who are supporting consistently, and you know who you are, can you do me a huge favor? Can you share the show? Whether that is sharing it on social media or by word of mouth, it would mean a lot to me. If you could also leave a comment and a rating on the show as well, these things help the show get in front of other people and the gospel shared to even more people. On the last episode, we had a comment on Spotify from Michelle, who says, "Such a magnificent take on these books, such a relaxed listen for my downtime. Absolutely brilliant." Thank you, Michelle. You are one of my most consistent supporters, and it is very, very appreciative. And thank you for your comment. I'm glad that it is something that you're enjoying, and I hope that it's something that everyone else can enjoy as well. So now, all that being said, let's get into this episode. So on our 13th day after leaving Duffer Island, Edmund sees what looks like a great dark mountain, and we decide to head to it because it's some sort of land. But as we get closer, we realize that this is not land or mist, that it is just darkness. And it is so dark that it seems to be moonless and starless outside, which I can imagine being quite dark, like probably not seeing anything actually. And so after this, Caspian Gerinian advises us that we should not go farther, and Edmund seems to agree with him on this. Lucy and Eustace just don't say anything, but they seem to be glad that we will not be going in that direction. And of course, Reepicheep disagrees. He thinks that if we are noble, we shouldn't be afraid of the dark. While I think he makes a good point, this also isn't just the dark. Like, this is darkness. It's different. Reepicheep values adventure, where for the rest of us, adventure is a side perk. And especially for Caspian, who seems to have value in the discovery, right? Like, he's on this quest to find the lost lords. Adventure is just a perk on the side, where Reepicheep's goal is to get to Aslan's country. He is willing to die trying even, and so this makes him fearless in nature. His first priority is adventure. And Caspian suggests that we don't go if Lucy doesn't want to go. And Lucy simply says, "I'm game." And so we make our way into the darkness in our battle positions because we don't know what we're getting ourselves into. Lucy's on top with the archers. Edmund, Caspian, Eustace, and Reepicheep are in the bows with swords. Now, at this point, it is not just darkness now, but it's also getting dreadfully cold, and we all seem to have lost our sense of direction. And we hear a scream. Caspian's mouth is too dry to even speak. This voice is asking for mercy and to be taken on board. Caspian, now able to speak, asks, "Who is it?" and tells it that it is welcome on board. Then we hear another voice and notice that someone is swimming towards us, and we bring him aboard. His eyes are so widely opened that it looks like he had no eyelids and is staring as if he is in the agony of pure fear. The man tells us to row away from this cursed shore, as this is the island where dreams come true. And he stresses to us that it's not just daydreams, but dreams. Meaning, like, what you would dream at night, good or bad, comes to life. Now, at first, we think that it would be a good thing if all our dreams come true. But when he tells us that it is not just the daydreams, that it's actually all dreams, including nightmares, we think differently about that. The island almost seems more like a concept than an actual physical place. Now we quickly start rowing, and only Reepicheep remains still. Caspian tells Reepicheep that there are some things no man can face, and to that, Reepicheep is proud to not be a man, and he gives a very stiff bow. Now, Lucy wants to be with Edmund and Caspian, but if dreams come true, they might turn into something horrible. So soon, everyone hears something different. Though the rowing made a good deal of noise, it did not quite conceal the total silence which surrounded the ship. Everyone knew it would be better not to listen, not to strain his ears for any sound from the darkness. But no one could help listening. And soon, everyone was hearing things. Each one heard something different. Do you hear a noise like a huge pair of scissors opening and shutting over there? Eustace asked Rheinelf. Hush, said Rheinelf. I can hear them crawling up the sides of the ship. It's just going to settle on the mast, said Caspian. Ugh, said a sailor. There are the gongs beginning. I knew they would. Caspian, trying not to look at anything, especially not to keep looking behind him, went aft to Drinian. Drinian, he said, in a very low voice. How long did we take rowing in? I mean, rowing to where we picked up the stranger. 5 minutes, perhaps, whispered Drinian. Why? Because we've been more than that already trying to get out. Drinian's hand shook on the tiller and a line of cold sweat ran down his face. The same idea was occurring to everyone on board. We shall never get out. Never get out, moaned the rowers. He's steering us wrong. We're going round and round in circles. We shall never get out. The stranger, who had been lying in a huddled heap on the deck, sat up and burst into a horrible screaming laugh. Never get out, he yelled. That's it, of course. We shall never get out. What a fool I was to have thought they would let me go as easily as that. No, no, we shall never get out. Lucy leant her head on the edge of the fighting top and whispered, Aslan, Aslan, if ever you loved us at all, send us help now. The darkness did not grow any less, but she began to feel a very, very little better. After all, nothing has really happened to us yet, she thought. Look, cried Rheinelf's voice hoarsely from the bows. There was a tiny speck of light ahead, and while they watched, the broad stream of light fell from it upon the ship. It did not alter the surrounding darkness, but the whole ship was lit up as if by searchlight. Caspian blinked, stared round, saw the faces of his companions all with wild, fixed expressions. Everyone was staring in the same direction. Behind everyone lay his black, sharply edged shadow. Lucy looked at the beam and presently saw something in it. At first it looked like a cross, then it looked like an aeroplane, then it looked like a kite, and at last, with a whirring of wings, it was right overhead and was an albatross. It circled 3 times round the mast and then perched for an instant on the crest of the gilded dragon at the prow. It called out in a strong, sweet voice what seemed to be words, though no one understood them. After that, it spread its wings, rose, and began to fly slowly ahead, bearing a little to the starboard. Drinian steered after it, not doubting that it offered good guidance. But no one except Lucy knew that it had circled the mast. It had whispered to her, "Courage, dear heart," and the voice she felt sure was Aslan's, and with a voice of delicious smell breathed in her face. In a few moments, the darkness turned into a grayness ahead, and then, almost before they dared to begin hoping, they had shot out into the sunlight and were in the warm, blue world again. And all at once, everybody realized that there was nothing to be afraid of, and never had been. They blinked their eyes and looked about them. The brightness of the ship herself astonished them. They had half expected to find that the darkness would cling to the white and the green and the gold in the form of some grime or scum. And then first one, and then another, began laughing. I reckon we've made a pretty good fools of ourselves, said Rheinelf. It had been 5 minutes to pick up the stranger, but yet it had been longer than 5 minutes trying to get out of the darkness now. So time was doing a weird thing, and like I mentioned before, we seem to have lost sense of direction. I think there's a sense of losing our sense of time as well. And everybody begins to think that we're never going to make it out. And Lucy, desperate, prays that Aslan will get us out of this, and that makes her feel a bit better. And I think this is so true for reality as well, where we can be in a really tough, really dark time, and we can pray to God. And, like in this story, the darkness hadn't gone away. The darkness was still there, but she began to feel better about it. And I think that is some very true, some very wise things that C.S. Lewis is putting into this chapter, where, even though we're still in the darkness of what we're going through, God can give us that peace and we can begin to feel better about it, even though nothing's really changed about it. And suddenly, there's a beam of light, and Lucy sees what first looks like a cross, then an aeroplane, then a kite, and then the beam is right overhead, and it's clear that it's an albatross. The albatross circles 3 times and then perches on the ship. It flies away, and Drinian follows it with the ship, trusting it to guide us. The albatross had circled the mast 3 times and whispered, "Courage, dear heart," to Lucy. And she is sure that it was Aslan. And there was also a delicious smell from the voice. And suddenly, we're in the sunlight again. It is possible that while Lucy got the message whispered to her, that all of us got a different message from Aslan. Now, obviously, we don't know this for sure, but we can speculate, because Drinian had no doubt but to follow the albatross. And I mentioned in a previous episode, but I do believe that the story is being told through Lucy's point of view. So if that is true, then it would make sense that we would only know what Lucy heard in the whisper instead of everybody else. And suddenly we all realize that there was nothing to be afraid of, and that there never really was. And just that clarity that now Aslan had given them. And I don't know about you, but I've been through some things in my life where I look back on it now and it's like, yeah, why was I even worried about that? Why did I stress out about that? Why was I having blank concern about this thing when it really wasn't bad? And so I want to read a psalm for you, Psalm 3. And it says, "Lord, how they have increased who trouble me. Many are they who rise up against me. Many are they who say of me, there is no help from him in God. But you, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory, and the one who lifts up my head. I cried to the Lord with my voice, and he heard me from his holy hill. I lay down and slept. I awoke, for the Lord sustained me. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people who have set themselves against me all around. Arise, O Lord. Save me, O Lord. For you have struck all of my enemies on the cheekbone. You have broken the teeth of the ungodly. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing is upon your people. God is our shield. In this psalm, David is calling out to God to deliver him. Likewise, Lucy prayed to Aslan. He also heard her voice. And like in the psalm, there was no reason to be afraid anymore. It says, "Many are they who rise up against me. Many are they who say of me, there is no hope for him in God." This is David talking about his enemies telling him that he is hopeless. And I see that, in the same way that the Dark Island kind of takes that role in the story here, where this island tormented people and made them feel hopeless. Where it would just tell you, like, yeah, you're hopeless. There's no hope. Like, we even started to think, like, no, we're never getting out of this. But yet, like David, and like in the story, God got David out and Aslan got them out of it. And so that is really where that hope comes from in both scenarios. I also like that C.S. Lewis mentioned that at first, Lucy saw what looked like a cross, right? I think that was just his way of being really explicit, really obvious about what exactly he's getting at here. And I think that was just kind of cool to mention and cool to read that she would have actually seen that cross in there, and that, yeah, it ended up being an albatross, but he's just showing that, like, no, this is what I'm trying to get at with this. Lucy lost no time in coming down to the deck, where she found the others all gathered round the newcomer. For a long time he was too happy to speak. He could only gaze at the sea and the sun and feel the bulwarks and the ropes, as if to make sure he was really awake, while tears rolled down his cheeks. "Thank you," he said at last. "You have saved me from... but I won't talk of that. And now, let me know who you are." "I am a Telmarine of Narnia, and when I was worth anything, men called me the Lord Roop." "And I," said Caspian, "am Caspian, King of Narnia, and I sail to find you and your companions, who were my father's friends." Lord Roop fell on his knees and kissed the king's hand. "Sire," he said, "you are the man in all the world I most wanted to see. Grant me a boon." "What is it?" asked Caspian. "Never to bring me back there," he said. He pointed astern. They all looked, but they saw only bright blue sea and a bright blue sky. The dark island and the darkness had vanished forever. "Why?" cried the Lord Roop. "You have destroyed it." "I don't think it was us," said Lucy. "Sire," said Drinian, "this wind is fair for the southeast. Shall I have our poor fellows up and set sail? And after that, every man who can be spared to his hammock?" "Yes," said Caspian, "and let there be grog all round. Hi-ho, I feel I could sleep the clock round myself." So all afternoon, with great joy, they sailed southeast with a fair wind, but nobody noticed when the albatross had disappeared. So the stranger that we had rescued was too happy to speak, and he's feeling around to make sure that he's really awake, which honestly makes sense because he spent who knows how long on that island not knowing if he is actually awake or not because his dreams became real. And this stranger, he reveals to us that he is the Lord Roop, another one of the Lost Lords. And Roop had asked us to never take him back to that island. But the dark island and the darkness, as we look behind us, has vanished. And it's just gone, and it never returned. And we keep sailing, and we realize that nobody noticed that the albatross was just gone. We don't know when it had left. We just realized that it was now gone. And so just further proof that it was really there to guide us out of that darkness. But it's strange. The dark island is just gone. And so Roop was left, was he just left on the dark island while the other Lost Lords kept going? Did he choose to be left there? Or, maybe he had a good daydream come to life and he decided he wanted to live there forever, but that was a big mistake because it was all of his dreams. Maybe the other lords decided to maroon him there for some reason. I guess we're uncertain at this point how he got there and why he's there. All we know is that Roop was left on this island for many years, just being tormented the whole time. And looking back on what happened, if we had never listened to Reepicheep, we would have never found and rescued Lord Roop, and who knows how much longer he would have actually been on the island if we had never found him and if we didn't listen to Reepicheep. So when I was researching for this episode, I realized that there's actually an alternate ending to this chapter where specifically this chapter that talks about the Dark Island. So in the version of the book that I've been using, which I believe is the edition of this one, it was published in 2006. And this is where, obviously, as I just said, Roop asks to never be taken back to the Dark Island, and then it vanishes. Where in an earlier and perhaps the original version, Roop asks to never be asked about what he saw there, and the island and darkness are still, it still remains there. He just asks to never ask me about what I saw there. And I thought that was interesting, and I'm not sure why this change was made. And I do like both versions. On one hand, Aslan guides them out, right? I mean, that's in both versions. But then it vanishes afterwards, showing that God can get us through dark times. But the only thing with that is that very often when God does get us through hard times or dark times, those things we've been through don't vanish, and we often still remember it. Like how people often say, forgive and forget. Well, honestly, we don't forget. We still remember these things. And in the older version or edition, it is probably more realistic, where God can get us through those things, but we may not want to speak about them, although honestly we should in order to process and get through those things. We don't want to speak about them, but we still remember them. And so I kind of like that older version then in that case, and I want to try to find that, because now I'm kind of wondering what other things throughout the book are maybe changed or different, or even throughout the other books. And yeah, I honestly don't know why they changed it, and like, honestly, don't know why. But I'm curious, what version of the book do you have? And you can let me know. Leave a comment, and I'm very curious to know who out there maybe has the original version or the version that I'm using as well. Well, that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to today's episode. We found that there are some pretty dark times in life, and we must turn to God to guide us through. And I believe that it is a choice we have to make to trust Him. You know, it's not going to be easy, but God does promise us in His Word that He will be with us in those dark times. You know, He never says that, you know, being a Christian, now everything's going to be easy. But He does promise to be alongside us, to guide and to direct us. And we have to invite the Holy Spirit to do that in our lives as well. And we have Psalms like Psalm 23 that says, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me." Psalm 139, verse 7-9 says, "Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend into heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, you are there." And there's many other times that the Bible tells us not to be afraid, and that's some of the biggest lessons from this episode. You know, there's really, oftentimes we're afraid of things, and sometimes, fears are valid. Other times, there's really nothing to be afraid of. But I think the biggest thing that we learn is that when we have hard times, when we have hard times, if we choose to fix our eyes on Jesus and trust Him to guide and direct us through it, we can have peace in that madness. So even if it's not taken away from us instantly, we can still have peace during those times. Now, before I let you all go, I want to remind you about free Luma bracelets. Christian bracelets that you can scan with your phone to get daily Bible reading and encouragement. Now use code STAYFAITHFUL, all one word, capital S, capital F, at checkout to save 15% off your order and help support Faithful Fables. Join me next time as we continue our voyage. For now, only 3 lost lords that remain. Join me on the deck of the Dawn Treader, and until next time, remember, stay faithful.